Hey there, Mikhail here with Toasty DIY, and today I just want to make a video talking about Tinkercad and kind of bringing my first project from CAD software to reality. So if you watch YouTube a lot, you've probably seen people like Mark Rober or Stuff Made Here, people like Michael Reeves who can conceptualize these things and then create them. I've always been jealous of that idea of having something, a problem, and be able to just facilitate a solution through your own tools and methods. I feel like living in an apartment, I struggle and probably could still do a lot of these things. But like, I don't want to have power tools in the apartment. I don't want to be drilling and making holes and things. And that feels like a necessary part of creating solutions to things. Well, at the office, however, we just got 3D printers. So we have two Bambu Labs printers sitting here. And I had recently bought a bunch of arcade buttons off of a website called Focus Attack. The idea is I wanted to screw all of them in and kind of test them all out. And if you've ever tested keyboard switches before, you either put them into the computer and then tap them out and kind of feel them, or you buy like a little switch tester, make this little box, you can push them all in, add your keycaps and tap away, and it gives you a good feeling of what these would feel like. So with that in mind, I thought, well, there must be one for an arcade stick. And I checked on Thingiverse, and I didn't give it a long seek, but I did find on Thingiverse this basic one. It was about 6 buttons, and I thought that would be interesting, but then I realized I bought way more buttons than 6, and I bought some sizes that the guy didn't have on that little box, and thought, well, maybe it's time for me to follow those engineers that I really enjoy and make my own solution. So that in mind, I had worked on 3D projects in the past for another job I had. It was just one project, but I had learned that I could create things on a software called Tinkercad. I'm certainly not expert enough to get into something like AutoCAD where I'm going to be measuring and doing things, and I'm not really proficient enough in Blender. I've tried, but I couldn't measure things out reasonably. But I knew Tinkercad came with kind of like a build plate. And I know that from 3D printing experience, you can measure out your build plate and know how big your prints can be. So therefore, I knew I could just set the dimensions of the plate in my software to be exactly that of the real life thing. So that way I knew I'm looking 1-to-1. And that way when I convert, inches to millimeters, that I get the right hole sizes for the things I'm building. So with all those parts in place, I went ahead and started working on it. And the B-roll that's been playing has been me building it out. And my experience that was really hard was on Tinkercad. It didn't let me select a circle and then change its radius. I had to do it by this square on the outside, which I'm sure there was some basic geography that I could remember, but I read a book a long time ago about just fun math things, and one of them was about how they calculated pi, and they would, I believe it was Archimedes, and he would take a square on the outside of a circle that would touch the edges of the circle on both sides, and then he would take one on the inside and measure the distance between the two edges of those squares, because somewhere in there is the radius of a circle. Well, he kept doing that. So he started with a square, then he went to like a hexagon, he went to like octagons and whatever, so on, going up and up until he had I believe the shape was an anticonticahexahedron, and it was like 190 shaped sided shape, and he measured the distance between those two to get that circle. And so because of that fun little fact, I just knew that I could find out what square fits around a circle of a certain radius, and I found a little calculator online, was able to plug in the numbers and find out that for my 30 millimeter buttons, I needed one, I think it was like 15 on the square, 15 millimeters each side would fit it, or something like that. It might have been 60, but essentially I get that set up, I get those buttons laid across, I made a little list of what buttons I'm getting to try to make it perfectly fit all of them, so I can do this all in one test and just kind of mark this entire plate off as the Focus Attack buttons. I got everything that wasn't a push snap-in button. I really just would rather have the screw-ons because I feel more confident I can get those to work. And I also love the idea of being able to move these things in and out. I probably won't ever do it, but it just makes me feel happy to know that. Well, with that being said, I measured out these holes, I got it, and it took me a long time to get them actually centered and corrected. I'm sure on a better software like AutoCAD, I could have just like selected a ruler or a line or kind of like a spline that I want to be able to cut across and set these on the same thing. On this software, there wasn't such a thing, so I just kind of had to move it around and feel it out by hand. On the computer, I don't think it showed as well, but here is the actual physical product. I have about 10 30 millimeter buttons. I have a few 24 millimeter buttons, and I have 2 18 millimeter buttons. So this is the plate. I got these legs to be really long because I have some long stemmed buttons that I'm going to be using. And all in all, what this made me realize is that I might be able to actually make this, because most of the buttons will actually be this shape, the 24 millimeter. I just bought all of them so I could kind of try them all out. I might be able to take this shape altogether, move these buttons since their radiuses are all correct, and actually turn these into my attack buttons and then get these over here and put a movement button around here. And I might be able to turn this into a like basic starter fight stick. If I buy, I think it's the Brook P5 Plus, or just the P5 board, if I can find out how to make screw holes on the back here, after I've rearranged this, I believe I'll be able to create some sort of fight stick enclosure with just 3D printing of this size alone. Because as you see, my hand against the board is about the size of when you see like snack box micros. I mean, I can get on here. I could theoretically have it, a board where I play like this if I wanted to. That'd be kind of funny, like a chess piece board, maybe. But I was pretty proud of it, and I just want to say, if you are somebody who has a 3D printer and you've ever wanted to try to make something, Tinkercad is a very simple browser software. It took me maybe 2 hours to figure it all out, mostly because of the radius problem. I've never drilled holes, and it may seem like a simple answer, and it probably is to some of you. But to me, for some reason, I was confused by the idea that if I have a 30-millimeter button, do I need a 30-millimeter hole, or do I need to be smaller for it to fit snugly? Well, I know I'm going to screw on the top and bottom, so I just need it to fit through here. But then how far apart should these buttons be? Because I don't know where the overlap of the actual rims will be. There were schematics online to read these sorts of things, and I did refer to them, but it just doesn't come to me naturally to be able to look at those and see how they're going to apply in real life. So this may not actually be functional, but it should get at least a few of the buttons in here. Hopefully I can do it where it actually goes all along and makes me really proud. If not, I clearly have extra room from which to work with, and I might have to go through and do that. But thank you all for following along. This is kind of becoming somewhat of a series of me working on this fight stick as I try one piece at a time. The next part will probably be buying the Brook board to make sure that the buttons actually work, and then I'll probably buy an enclosure. I did a video just recently about my dream fight stick, and I was using the B&B V2 enclosure from Focus Attack. I actually found out that Eternal Rivals has cheaper enclosures, and for me, I feel like an enclosure, like designing this didn't take too long. I don't know why I couldn't just use Tinkercad to develop the outlines for a plexiglass enclosure and find a local laser cutter. I don't know how hard that is. Maybe I'm talking and I don't understand the game yet, but I just think that when it comes to these enclosures, that's the most expensive, or that feels like a very expensive part for something made out of acrylic and plastic. Though I don't understand the level of complexity in the design. I have a few friends who work in CAD, and if you work in CAD software and you think that's a crazy concept, just let me know down below how difficult that actually is, because I might just go through and try doing it and then reach out to some of my friends who work in CAD and see if they could tell me about problems. Because I watched one guy do it, and he talked about how he does it and whatever, and he allowed for certain tolerances he was describing that I didn't fully understand. I would just make it, theoretically assume it would all print exactly right as it does with 3D printing. But I don't know how, if I make a cut, does the cut happen on the outside or the inside or right on the line? Does that make it smaller, theoretically, than what I've asked for? I don't know, but I think those numbers would matter when you're working in units of millimeters for this sort of thing. I also don't know how to make a screw hole. I feel like a screw hole should just be a hole, theoretically, but does it need to have threading? I don't know. Like I said, any comments or questions, leave them down below. I'd love to hear your all's opinion on this. And if you have a Tinkercad project that you'd like to work on, I'd love to know what you've made with it and what you've been able to design. Your limit really is your imagination when it comes to some of these creative endeavors. So I'd love to know if anyone else has made something like a fight stick or some other controller. I recently got drift on my PS5 controller, and I generally just thought, is there any way to take this apart and 3D print a solution? It can be really cool what you can do. So thank you all for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I appreciate you. Peace.